Hi, how are you? And welcome back to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau, Chief of Police of the Wolfeboro Police Department, and to my left is my able-bodied Executive Officer, Captain Mark Livy. So we're into the month of February, and it has been a very busy month for the Wolfeboro Police Department in January. A lot of ministerial business and acts have taken place. So what does that mean? That means housekeeping, right? So we're moving into the new budgetary cycle, looking forward to the town vote, which will be on the 12th of March, coming up. We've had just finished, and you should be seeing on Wolfeboro Community TV, the recording of the warrants and the warrant articles by your Board of Selectmen and all the department heads who had warrant articles to go before the town. So that was good. That was a very good session. So, and that should be very informative. So the best thing to do is stay informed. Stay informed of your government and of your governance. Make sure you can make informed decisions when you go to the polls. I would like to thank everybody who has in the past and who's planning on supporting the town's operating budget and the town of Wolfeboro's police union contract. I think the union negotiating committee, which consists of a police commissioner, a board of selectmen member, and the town manager, did a phenomenal job this year with a 4-year contract for the union. The captain and I, just so you know, the captain and I are not part of that union negotiating process. We just get to deal with it when it's done. But in any event, I think it was really well done this year by the town. And though a 4-year contract does seem lengthy, it really saves money in the long run, and I'm all about curbing budgetary growth. That's really important to do, not just for the police department but for the town. So we need to get the biggest bang for the buck with the least expenditure of tax, capital, and resources. And while I'm on this topic, I just want to give a big shout out to not just the Police Commission and the Board of Selectmen, who are always very helpful and instructional in the budgetary process, but I want to give a big hand out to the Budget Committee. This year, like years past, we had some good, honest, frank discussion, and it's good, and there's nothing wrong with that. And even though sometimes these meetings may seem adversarial, and I suppose to a certain extent they are, it's important to get these issues out on the table, to discuss them and have good, honest, frank discussions. That's what makes government work. That is important to do. And like I've always said in the past, if it's okay to take a differing view or differing opinion on a topic. I've always said that if everybody is thinking alike, nobody's thinking. So again, I want to give a big hand out to the Wolfeboro Budget Committee. They have a lot of hard work to do, and they scrutinize every part of the budget, not just the police department budget, but the entire town's budget, the operating budget, and all the warrant articles. A lot of bright men on that board. They ask good, insightful questions, and they dig deep into the town's finances, as well they should. And so I applaud them for the work that they've done this year, and because it was tough. It was really hard this year, and it just. Some years it's easy, some years it's hard, but they did a phenomenal job, and I'm very pleased with the end result. And of course, I'm very grateful for John McDonald, the chairman of the Budget Committee, who I think always runs a nice meeting and always does a good job. He certainly has the best interest of the citizens of Wolfeboro and now the citizens of New Hampshire in his heart, as he's now a state representative as well. So thank you, Budget Committee, for doing your job and doing it very well. And I think the citizens can take great measure in that. So moving on with the Wolfeboro Police Department, we're gearing up for what is proving to be a very busy 2019. The end-of-year statistics coming out of 2018 were mixed. We were down in some areas in terms of crime and up in other areas. One of the things that we were up in was DWIs, which is never a good trend. So we're going to be taking extra steps this year to try and focus on DWI interdiction. The other thing that seems to be on the rise, or at least is a trend, is drug distribution and drug trafficking. We had a number of major cases in 2018. We're going to continue to be focused on drug interdiction and taking those drugs and those poisons off the street before they reach their intended markets. The other thing that that was troubling, very, very troubling to me, is we were up in what I call fraud, theft type cases, specifically things like games of chance and swindling were up. And these are often very insidious crimes where the perpetrator of the crime is usually hailing from a jurisdiction outside of Wolfeboro. It makes it a challenge for us to investigate. We often have to pull in other resources, whether it's state police resources or federal government resources. It's the only way we have to get at these crimes. They bilk thousands of dollars, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars out of unsuspecting victims. So here's what I'm going to tell you. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. You don't have a long-lost cousin or relative in Nigeria that just won millions of dollars in a lottery. Trust me on this one. You don't have that. Okay, don't do that. If somebody sends you a Publishers Clearinghouse lottery ticket and says you just won the mega bucks and all we need you to do is to go ahead and cash the check and send us back $30,000, don't do it. Don't do it, because the check is bad. Believe me, you didn't win the Publishers Clearinghouse, okay? This whole thing is fraud. And some of them are very, very good. One last thing, and this one is near and dear to my heart because I sit on the Governor's Council for Animal Abuse, and this one really pulls at the heartstrings often. People that are looking for new puppies, rescue animals or so forth, which I laud you. That's awesome. That's what we want people to do, right? We want people to adopt from shelters and so forth and so on. Be very careful about buying puppies online. A common practice is that they'll ask you, it'll be a too good to be true type of scenario. You want to get a Bichon or you want to get a husky, and you find a breeder and they send send $800 and we'll put the husky in shipment for you, and then they'll say, the husky's stuck in customs in North Carolina, and you need to send another $500 to get the dog out. You've just been bilked out of $800. All right, so don't, no pun intended, don't buy into that one. That's a scam going on right now. That's bad. All right, so be very careful about buying animals online. Buy from vendors that you know or that you can verify. The other thing is, while I'm on this topic, just so you know, the FBI, the IRS, Secret Service, Customs, Treasury, some of these other federal law enforcement agencies, okay, they're not going to call you on the phone and say, we have an arrest warrant for you, and you can get out of this arrest warrant by sending us $500 in iTunes cards. All right, that's not the way they work. If they have an arrest warrant for you, they will come and they will knock on your door, and then they will go ahead and make an arrest, okay? If the IRS has an issue with you, they will send you a certified letter and they will schedule an appointment, and it'll be at a federal building, and you go down and you'll meet with the IRS agents and they will identify themselves. So this is another common scam that people fall for. So please, don't believe this, okay? They don't do business over the internet. They don't do business via telephone. They will send you a certified letter, right? You'll have to trust me. Nothing good ever comes certified mail. All right, you'll have to sign for it, and then it'll be a what is called a frankled envelope. It'll have the IRS or the FBI logo on the envelope with the postage paid, and so it'll be an official looking envelope. So those are the things I want you to be mindful of going into 2019. Confidence scams are on the increase, and this again, it bilks unsuspecting victims out of thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars. And some of these scams are quite sophisticated. If you think it's a scam, if you want to come down and talk to somebody at the Wolfeboro PD, we'll help you figure that one out. But you can do your own research. You can Google it online. Chances are Google will be correct, and it'll say, yep, this is a scam, don't do it, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, so just be a little bit more cognizant, a little bit more situationally aware of your surroundings and about what you're going to do before you do it. And again, if you have any questions, just give us a shout. Moving into February, dangerous travel month. February is a dangerous travel month. Lots of bad weather comes in February. Looks like the winter hit us late a little this year to a certain extent. You know, we got a lot of snow in January, and it looks like that trend is going to keep up through February and possibly into March. So keep your eye on the weather. We live in the Northeast, right? We got 6 months of winter, and we got 6 months of summer, right? Very little in between. So just keep your eye on the weather. All right, that's all I ask. Go slow. All right, this is not the time to be speeding. And just because you have four-wheel drive doesn't mean you have any better four-wheel stopping. Okay, think about that one. All right, yeah, you got four-wheel drive, you get better traction. You're not going to stop any faster on ice or snow than you already do. All right, so keep that one in the back of your mind. The Wolfeboro Police Department will be out. We'll be out on patrol. We are now into our new fiscal year 19 federal government grant, so we'll be doing DWI interdiction and speed enforcement and all the normal grants that you see. These still represent, by the way, speed complaints still represent the greatest quality of life challenge that we have in the Wolfeboro Police Department. So be mindful of your neighbors and be mindful of the speed limits and just slow down, right? The speed limits are there for your safety and for the safety of others, and that's all we ask, voluntary compliance with the law. Having said that, I think that's about everything I want to mention. Now I'm going to turn it over to the captain for a detailed look at the operations within the Wolfeboro PD. Captain?
Thanks, Chief. As you mentioned, the highway safety grants are out there, so he's covered that pretty well. And we're going to be out there month to month with different various grants, the Safe Commute, the DWI, Click at a Ticket. There's just so many variations of it. When we get to the summer months, then you'll have the pedestrian grant that's out there that will work with the bike, mountain bike patrol, associated with that for the summer months. Last month, Sergeant Strock, our K-9 officer, got the promotion, so he was sworn in the month of January. So if you see him out there, so if you see him out there, congratulate him. For his promotion. It's an honor for him and his family for that. In dispatch, there's not much new going on in dispatch in the month of January from the month of December. New month, new things are going on. Keeping up with everything. Other than with both officers and dispatchers, we're looking for part-time work. Anyone that's interested in being a part-time dispatcher or a part-time officer, contact us, the chief or I. Email, give us a call if you're interested, and we'll go through that process and see if you want to do that and give you all the ins and outs of what it really involves about the job description. Anything else that what's kind of going on inside is that, so we get to the month of January, so it's been 6 months since evaluations. Our supervisors are doing evaluations on other officers. I do the evaluations on the supervisors. It's a process, but it's a good process. It keeps everybody, the goods and the bads of what they've been doing for the last 6 months, keeps them working on what kind of training they're looking at, what kind of training they need. It keeps our officers and dispatchers up to par with everything. Other than that, there really isn't much other than February that he might not have mentioned is vacation for the kids at the end of the month. I think it starts on the week of the 25th, so they'll be off for the week. So you'll see most people try to get away from the snow for a little while and go somewhere warm. I will be somewhere warm. I can tell you that for that week, so I will not be around. But and other than that, if you have any areas, I mean, if we're talking about the highway safety grants, but any areas of concern that you guys have out there in areas, streets, state roads or town roads, let us know. Give us an email, the chief or I or an officer, and we'll work on that area. And we'll take care of that and try to slow down those speeds that are out there. I mean, it's the summer month, people should be slowing down, but as we all know, all of a sudden a nice sunny day like today, and people might be going a little fast, and that's what the trend is. But let us know, give us an email, and we'll move on from there. Other than that, I don't have anything else for operations, and I'll turn it back over to the chief.
Hey, thank you. Captain, getting back to Michael Strock being promoted to sergeant, that, by the way, that was a tough promotional process. And we had 6 officers go out for it. All of them did very well. Mike did obviously exceptional, and he was promoted. There's a reason the process is tough. There's a written exam, and there are 2 oral boards, and they really do put the officers through their paces. The point is behind this is that the process makes a good officer that much better. It forces them to think. It forces them to express themselves in written format, and then to explain their answers before 2 separate boards, which is good, which is the way it really ought to be. I will tell you that from personal experience and from just knowledge, being a police officer for over 23 years now, that sergeant is the most difficult rank to make. It's a tough rank. It's where the rubber meets the road. First line supervisors, they have an awful lot of responsibility thrust upon them. But it is the hardest rank to make. Once they to make that, the other promotions have a tendency to fall right in line. No doubt about it that young Officer Strock will get a lot more experience now as a supervisor out on the road and doing all the great things that we know he's going to do. So my hat is off to Mikey and the other officers who did a phenomenal job on their process. So when you see him, definitely congratulate him, and don't be afraid to touch those sergeant stripes. he certainly earned them. That's about it. That kind of wraps things up. I do want to put a plug in for our local area venues relative to skiing and snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. If you're not as fortunate enough as the captain to be in a warmer climate, take advantage of everything that Wolfeboro has to offer. We have the sports complex at Abenaki, at Mount Abenaki. I used to do ski patrol there years ago. It is, if not the oldest ski area in North America, it's certainly one of the oldest. So that should be reason enough just to go ahead and get that lift ticket kind of as a trophy. I think it's very inexpensive, about $5 to go ahead and ski there. It does have quite a steep vertical drop, so you know if you're a downhill racer, you'll certainly enjoy that. It's where our Kingswood Knights practice their ski team practices, and it's a good time. There's also the Sewell Woods for snowshoeing and cross country skiing. We have a brand new beautiful ski chalet that was completed in 2015. So you can take advantage of that, warm yourself by the fire, and get something hot to eat and drink. So there's a lot that Wolfeboro has to offer in the wintertime. Please take advantage of it. Please, when you see Christine Collins, tell her we sent you. Thank you very much. And please tune in again to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And again, I am Chief Dean Rondeau, Wolfeboro PD. My captain, executive officer, Captain Mark Livy. And as always, coffee's on me. Just let Tim or Peter know at Wolfeboro Community TV that you want to be on the show. And that's all it takes. Thanks, and have a great day, and be safe out there. Hi, how you doing? This is Chief Dean Rondeau, Chief of Police of the Wolfeboro Police Department. I'm here with Luke Friedenberg, who has a few questions that he wants to talk about some recent events and so forth. So I'm just going to turn it right over to Luke. Luke? Welcome on to the show.
Chief, thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
It's a great opportunity for citizens to come in and be able to, speak directly with our local law enforcement, ask questions.
Absolutely.
And I think it gives people a good opportunity to get feedback. And
Absolutely.
So,
that's the whole purpose of it.
So I'm just going to jump right in with a question. You know, it's been about 2 years now. Families in Transition purchased a building on Lander Street over in Wolfeboro, where people in a crisis can, spend 6 months in a place that provides housing for them, provides resources like job training and job skills. And at the time, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not, a place like this would bring in more transient type people, or if it'd bring in more crime. And the chief from Manchester came up and spoke to the planning board and all that stuff. And I just wanted to know, 6 months in now, you have people living there. It's full, from what I hear. Are you seeing any of that?
So those are really great questions. So the first thing is that I'll tell you is that no, we're not seeing any increase in crime associated with families in transition. We're not seeing anything like that. I think that the Families in Transition program, and I was supportive of it for a couple of reasons, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute, is really, really good. And it was something that we need. One, I just want to say it's a nonprofit organization, right? So these are all private funds that get used to help folks that, for whatever reason, have lost their job, lost their home, and they're not. The reason I like it is they're not having to subsist or subside on government handouts, whether it's welfare through the town or federal welfare or other federal programs. This is completely nonprofit. They have a wealth of resources. Job training is one, as you mentioned. They are connected to a broader range of services. If particular family members need services, there's strict rules in place. There are curfews in effect for those people taking part in the program. I know there's a limit as to how long you can stay there. I just can't remember what that is. But I think it's really it's a very good program, and this is our own people helping our own people. And we're not seeing an increase in transient residents from outside the jurisdiction. So what I say, the jurisdiction, the Governor Wentworth Regional School District, that's really who it serves. So again, this is folks in Wolfeboro and the greater Wolfeboro area helping other folks from the greater Wolfeboro area. I'm in support of it. I think it's good. Certainly what we need, and what I like about it, what I like the most about it is the fact that it is not a government-run program. It's a nonprofit. They have strict rules and regulations, and they seem to be following them. And we haven't had any increase in crime on Laner Street or anywhere else associated with families in transition.
Thanks, Chief, for answering that question. I think people in town, need to know that it's an important part of our community now. It's a resource that's available. So I'm just gonna I'll jump right into my next question. There's been a lot of stuff going on in Massachusetts with, marijuana being legalized recreationally. You got 2 facilities down there that have opened that are being flooded with people coming in and buying, marijuana and for recreation and for health reasons. But where do you see that going in New Hampshire?
That's a great question. So I know, first of all, I'm going to say that there are strong feelings on both sides of this very complex topic. So what I'm about to say isn't meant to hurt anybody's feelings, all right? I don't want to do that. That's not what I'm here to do. But I see it being legalized in New Hampshire. I just don't know if it's going to be this year or next year or the following year, but eventually, certainly within 5 years, it'll be legalized. Now, the next question is, do I think that's a good idea? And I don't, and here's the reason, and this is probably what you would expect the chief of police to say, but I do a lot of research on this topic, and so the first thing I'm going to say is, I think the medical benefits to marijuana are dubious at best, and that's just my personal opinion from looking at the research and doing some critical thinking and some independent thought on this. I know that that's not the prevailing view, right? I know that I am probably in the minority, but I honestly believe that the medical benefits to marijuana are dubious at best. That's number one. Number two, this is not a medicine, right? Doctors can't prescribe this. That seems to be a common misnomer. Oh, I have some soft tissue injuries in my back. I'm going to, I qualify for medical marijuana. I'm going to go to my doctor and get a prescription. No, that's not the way it works. That's not the way any of this works, okay? So that's an issue right there, right? Doctors will not give you a prescription for this. They can't. It's a Schedule I drug. It's against federal law. Okay, so they can't prescribe it. The third thing is I think the research is pretty clear on marijuana. Okay, so much like alcohol, right, which has its own list of maladies, marijuana does too. One of them is paranoia, increased anxiety, psychosis, cancer. All right, so there are a whole host of issues associated with marijuana. No doctor in his right mind is going to say, I think it's a good idea for you to start smoking marijuana. You're not going to take a medicine. There is no medicine out there that we take by inhalation. All right, it just doesn't exist. Okay, now look, right? People often say, well, it's better for you than alcohol, and da 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 da. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. Right? That seems to be speculation, I think, on the part of some people. But I will tell you that alcohol, right, does have some medicinal qualities to it, right? Red wine. Red wine is an anti-inflammatory, right? The research is clear on that. Red wine can help lower cholesterol, can help lower blood pressure. Hard liquors like whiskeys and scotches, right, can help regulate your blood sugar. Except that, so there, right, we have some medicinal value to alcohol, right? And in the 1800s and in the early 1900s, in times of extreme emergency, alcohol was often used as a makeshift anesthetic, right? It has a numbing effect, all right? Just ask anybody that's ever been drunk, right? You're feeling no pain, right? Remember that? You feel no pain. Where do you think that comes from? But here's the point. The point is, you don't go to your doctor and say, gee, I got some joint and shoulder issues, and the doctor says, well, I'm going to give you a prescription of 2 liters a bottle of red wine a day. You don't see a doctor doing that, okay? And it's the same thing with marijuana, right? You're just not going to see a doctor saying, hey, I think you need to smoke a bowl a day, right? They're not going to say that, all right, because it's not good for you, right? The science is clear on this. I would encourage people to do their own research. Lastly, I'm going to say on medical marijuana, the medicinal benefits I said earlier are dubious at best, all right? But what it appears to me is that from reading scholarly journals like the New England Journal of Medicine, or reading some of the research coming out of Brown University and Harvard University relative to medical marijuana, suggests that the beneficial properties of marijuana come from the oil, right? The hemp oil, which is just endemic in the plant, right? It's not coming from the THC, which is a huge misnomer, all right? So if that is indeed the case, why haven't the botanists, why haven't the people involved in the marijuana clinics increased the beneficial oils in the hemp plant and decreased the THC content? And what you see is quite the opposite. You see these incredibly potent, powerful marijuana plants like we've never seen before, with very little of the medicinal value of the oil and THC concentrations as high as 30%, right? The stuff that I think a lot of the people at what I'll call the Woodstock generation experienced, putting it in perspective for our viewers and our listeners, was maybe 5% THC, maybe 8% on a good day. The stuff that we're talking about now, that if you go to a marijuana clinic or you go over to Maine or Massachusetts, you can get THC concentrations as high as 30%. That's a problem. That's the problem. So I see the whole medical marijuana piece as a back door to get around the Schedule 1 limitations of the federal government, right? And I think it was just a sneaky way to do it. And they did it. They're successful. And I think once we let the genie out of the bottle, we're never going to get it back in. And then there's the whole issue of black markets. You're going to see an increase in black markets. If you're unfamiliar with this and you say, no, that won't happen, no, it will happen. It's already happening. Talk to folks from Colorado or Washington, California. And more importantly, talk to an economist, right? Talk to somebody that has a degree in economics and talk to them about black markets, and they will tell you that this is going to create a black market without a doubt. Because people are going to try to get away from or avoid the permitting fees, and they're going to try to get away from the taxation piece that is going to be associated with any legalization of marijuana. We're not getting rid of one body of laws. That's not what's going to happen. We're going to trade one body of laws for another body of laws. Remember, folks, anything that is regulated now has to be enforced. How do you do that? You do that with administrative rules, regulations, and laws. Back to you.
Thanks, Chief.
I'm sorry if you got way too much more than you wanted on that one. That's a passion of mine.
So just my final thing that I was wanted to ask you about. As you know, I live and work at Brewster part-time. A few weeks ago, there was an incident where shots fired in town, and I just wanted to say, it was very impressive seeing the immediate reaction from so many agencies. And I know you can't talk about the specifics of what happened and things like that, but just give us a review of how you felt things came together in the end, and bringing in so many different agencies and working well together.
Sounds good. Okay, Luke, thanks. And one thing so this is a great question from Luke. And here's just the bottom line. My policies and procedures, right, my tactics, techniques, and procedures, that's kind of classified information, right? How we respond to certain events and situations that's kind of internal police policy. The reason we keep it quiet and we don't like to talk about how we respond is because we don't want bad people figuring out how we respond and then trying to counter that. Okay, so that's the simple reason why we sometimes we train late at night in other areas when no one's looking, so to speak, because we don't want people copying our tactics, techniques, and procedures or learning them and then countering those, learning countermeasures. We do an awful lot of training with other police agencies in and around the Lakes region for a whole bunch of different reasons. Nothing gets us more concerned than a school shooting incident. I have officers, each officer in my department has 3 or 4 additional duties. I have 2 officers that do nothing but examine all of the after-action reports and the post-scenario after-action drills of the various police departments that unfortunately have been involved in school shootings. And we examine what worked, what didn't work, how is the threat evolving, and so that's the first thing I want to say. I have two officers that they do a fantastic job on that. Nothing gets us more concerned than we get a shots fired complaint, and that's exactly what happened. The incident you're referring to was actually about four weeks ago. I know it seems like only a couple of weeks ago, but it was that. I'm happy to report that's not the case, though. That's exactly how it seemed to fall out. And we had, as you said, as I like to point out, because somebody said the response was swift, immediate, and overwhelming, which is exactly what we're aimed at. And now look, folks, understand that I do my very best to try to look good and to be pleasing to the community and to be officer friendly, so to speak. But in a situation like this, you're going to see officers in heightened state of alert. You're going to see them with weapons that you've probably never seen them with before. They're going to have increased body armor for personal protection. They're going to have helmets, and we carry all that equipment in our vehicles. And we were very fortunate that we had a number of responding agencies, about 5 responding agencies, and much like the situation, the double homicide that we had in October, we had about 20 or so responding officers. Not all of them were easily visible, and that's obviously for a very important reason. But we're happy to say that was not the case there at Brewster Academy, and that. But it was a good practice drill. It was a good intent call, without doubt. The call came in from two separate sources, and then another law enforcement agency almost immediately to the Wolfeboro Police Department. So we really appreciate that. And I would say that everything came together very well, and the men went right into their drills, and we learned a lot from that, and we're always learning and we're always evolving from things that happen. So I do appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, and it was a little. I bet if you were on Brewster Academy at that time, at that moment, or if you were driving by and you saw the the sea of blue flashing lights and police cruisers and officers walking around looking like something you've never seen before, you probably was a bit disconcerting, and I certainly can appreciate that. But we were able to, I think, get to the bottom of the situation very quickly and de-escalate as quickly as we were able to ramp up. So did that answer your question?
Answered it perfectly. I mean, I think that's, you know, you know, in a small community, in any small community, you know, you never know.
You never know.
You never know. And that kind of response, you know, showed that, and you know, even though it was what it was in the end, the response was, I you know, from my point of view, was right on. And I think that instills a sense of confidence in the department and the surrounding departments, and also in, you know, every member of the community. I think it builds that level of confidence that we really need. And in Wolfeboro, it's, you know, we're a year-round place. I mean, we're slammed for 6 months of the year, but yeah, it's so. Thank you for answering my questions today.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for being on the show. And lastly, listen, relative to what Luke said, this is a relatively small town. It's bucolic, and we love it. That's why we're all here. But please understand, I would be remiss in my job. I would be derelict in my duty if I said, "Oh, pshaw, that'll never happen." Right? This is Wolfeboro. It'll never happen. I could not do that. And please, folks, understand that I worry every night. I worry every night. I worry more than about 15 people combined. And that's a good thing. And if I'm worrying a lot, I know my executive officer is worrying a lot. He's sitting right over there. I know he's worrying a lot. So between the two of us, we worry for the entire town, and we're always looking at, you know, what is the next threat? Where are the gaps? How do we have to shore this up? What do we have to do? And this is not about, and somebody actually criticized me the other day. They said, he's trying to build Fortress Wolfeboro. No, that's not it. I'm trying to be ready. I'm trying to look at what is the threat? How is the threat evolving? How can I protect the citizens better, right? You know, many of you know I have a degree in political science, and I will tell you that, you know, from the writings of Hobbes and Rousseau, right, the first job of any government is protection of its citizens, right? That is the first job. Sometimes that's the physical protection. Sometimes it's simply administrative rules and regulations, okay? But regardless of how we do that, how we achieve that goal, I'm very serious about that. I'm very serious about protecting the citizens of Wolfeboro. I want this to be a great place. I want it to be a safe place, a place where you don't have to worry about, you know, leaving your children on the beach or you know worrying about letting your children ride their bikes to school or walk to school. That's not that's what I want. I want a nice, quiet, bucolic town. So it's incumbent upon myself and the captain to be forward-looking and to be strategic in our mindset and looking at what is the next threat rolling down and how do we negate that, or how do we mitigate that. You can't plan for every contingency, but you can plan for the top 2 or 3, and that's what this is all about. Thank you, sir. Hi, how you doing? This is Chief Rondo, Chief of Police of Wolfeboro PD, and welcome back to Coffee and Connections, and I'm here with your safety tip of the month. So we're well into the month of February at this point, and listen, there's been a number of freeze-thaw cycles, right? Some have been relatively minor, some have been kind of significant. This is the month where, you know, we have the airplanes landing on the lake over in Alton, and we have various festivals, the Brew Fest, Ice Fishing Festival, Fisherville out on the lake, and people enjoy cross-country skiing, snowmobiling, and snowshoeing out on the big lake, right? And that's why we're all up here. But listen, be careful of the ice thickness, all right? Before you start pulling your bob houses in February or March, make sure the ice is thick enough to support that four-wheel drive vehicle, your pickup truck, or whatever you are going to be using. Be careful of the ice fissures that pop up with these freeze-thaw cycles. You don't want your snowmobile going through one of these, one of these very thin ice fishers on the ice and ending up at the bottom of the lake. That would be bad. And certainly you don't want to end up at the bottom of the lake, not in this temperature or with the temperature of the water. So be mindful of the thickness of the ice. Fish and Game, they do a great job. New Hampshire Fish and Game does a great job of checking the ice. So make sure you check the thickness. If you have any questions, give them a call, and they'll be able to tell you if it's thick or thin and where to stay away from. So thank you very much. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau, Wolfeboro PD. And thank you for tuning in to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And as always, if you want to be on the show, contact Tim or Peter at Wolfeboro Community TV. Come on down. Talk about anything you want. Talk about the Boston Red Sox, New England Patriots. We can talk about First Amendment issues or Fourth Amendment issues or whatever on your mind. Come on down. Be my guest. Coffee's on me. Thank you.